Today's video is sponsored by We Crochet. What influenced the differences between UK and US crochet terms? No one's really sure. However, basic stitches we call single crochet in America, for instance, is called double crochet in the United Kingdom. As you can see, discrepancy in stitch terminology such as this can make a huge difference in the end result. But don't run away yet, there's theories to its origin, and in this video we're going to discuss why US and UK crochet terminology changed. So, when did British and American crochet terms diverge? Once again, nobody knows, but what I found is that it wasn't an instant diversion. Many patterns published in America during the 1800s and early 1900s also use terms we refer today as UK terminology. If you're a crocheter who loves to try out vintage patterns, please be aware of what crochet terminology you're using. Crochet is a craft that's been around for centuries. You can even find traces of crochet's distant ancestors going back to 6500 BC. Find out more about crochet's long history in a video I made. I'll link it down in the description below and in the comments. We're not going back that far. These two countries have very different crochet terms, and they must have diverged at some point in history, right? Let's start our crochet history lesson in the 1800s, when crochet was commonly done in Europe at the time. In the United Kingdom, even Queen Victoria found this pastime comforting. In the last year of her long life, she crocheted 8 scarves for members of her forces fighting in South Africa. The 1800s saw a large migration of Europeans to America. This was due to the Industrial Revolution in Europe, which led to a shortage of jobs and food. In Ireland, during the potato famine of 1845 and 1850, poor Irish men, women, and children would sell Irish crochet just to make ends meet. The famine caused more than 1 million deaths from starvation and forced over 1 million people to leave Ireland. The United States was seen as a land of opportunity and freedom during this time period. This was also a prime opportunity for crochet to spread to the United States. And remember guys, at this time there was no crochet standardization. In Pauline Turner's book, Crochet Lace, she explains that crochet evolved in the mid-1800s as a way to mimic labor-intense lace. Crocheters saw examples and recreated the look of these laces. They shared their work using small samples and sometimes using sketches, diagrams, or charts. Often the craft was transmitted to person rather than by written instruction. Can you see how crochet is starting to get lost in translation? Today's video is sponsored by We Crochet. If you've never heard of We Crochet, they're the sister company to Knit Picks that caters directly to crocheters. At We Crochet, you'll find a huge selection of yarns that's perfect for any thrifty shopper. We Crochet offers all types of yarn, from the cheap and cheerful to the rich and luxurious. They have the highest quality of yarns for the lowest prices, guaranteed. My favorite yarn is Bravo worsted weight. You'll probably notice a lot of my patterns use it because it's the right price and the right feel for my project. They have tons of free and paid crochet patterns from designers all over the world. It's a one-stop shop for all your yarn addictions. So make sure you head over to crochet.com to check out some of their yarns for your very next project. It's still a big question, why are US and UK crochet terms different? Alright, like dialect, crochet has a healthy amount of slang that takes some getting used to, but crocheters tend to be all too happy to share what they mean. Guys, I want you to comment down below some of your favorite crochet slang or shortened abbreviations. Here's a non-crochet example how words mean different things depending on your geographic location. For example, in the US, wearing pants outside is completely normal, but if you're walking around in pants in the UK, you might get arrested. Pants equals underwear in the UK. Once again, can you see how easily words and phrases can be lost in translation? So the two set of crafters on either side of the Atlantic used stitch names that they were familiar with. That's all fine and dandy until patterns started to become printed and sold in different countries. That meant the names of stitches needed to be standardized for each country. Thus began the biggest cluster of all history. Crochet standardization. So when exactly did crochet terms become standardized? According to Antique Pattern Library, starting in the 1820s, antique and vintage basic crochet terms varied from publication to publication. Sometime in the 1880s, crochet terms for the basic stitches became more standardized in Britain, even though American publishers began to use what we know now as US crochet terminologies. British terms were still used in many US publications well after World War I. So, how did these crochet terms get their names? One theory is that UK terms refer to the number of loops you have on a hook after you draw a loop through the next stitch. In US crochet terms, it refers to the number of times you move the hook to complete a stitch. For example, after you've drawn yarn through the stitch in the previous row, you have 2 loops on your hook or double loop, hence, in the United Kingdom, the double crochet. In the US, to complete the stitch, you only have to draw the yarn through both loops on the hook once, which is a single movement, hence the single crochet. Alright, so which crochet terms are the same? We use some of the same terms but are completely different stitches. The chain and the slip stitch are the same in US and UK, but that's where it stops. In the UK, they don't even have a single crochet, and in the US, a half treble just sounds weird. Alright, British friends, forgive me. Who am I to judge? I drink wine from a box, so forgive me. What's the main difference between UK and US crochet terms? The main difference between the two is the starting point. They're basically an offset of one another. After the chain and slip stitch, US terms start with a single crochet, while UK begins with a double crochet. The next step up in the US is a double crochet and treble stitch in the UK. Learning all these stitch names can be difficult, so I'm just going to provide you with a chart so you can easily see all the stitches. So you can pause the video here and see exactly what it looks like. How do you know if a pattern is written in US or UK terms? With the internet, it was suddenly very apparent that we use the same terms to refer to completely different stitches. Most patterns are kind enough to let you know if it was written in US or UK crochet terminologies. But even I, as a crochet designer, I forget. Actually, I always forget. According to Craftsy.com, one way to tell if it's an American pattern is to look for the single crochet. British terms don't use single crochet at all. So if you see a single crochet in the pattern, it's likely an American term. You can also check for other wording in the pattern, such as a half treble crochet. That doesn't exist in US terms. So make sure you look for it. If you want your mind even more blown, there's also Japanese, Chinese, Croatian, Scandinavian, South American, and other crochet terminology as well, and not to mention universal crochet symbols. In my opinion, crocheters didn't realize they were creating problems for future pattern followers. They just talked about their craft the best way that they could. It wasn't about patterns being produced on a massive scale. It was just a handy craft that they used in their everyday lives. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to know more about crochet history, check out my video right here, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye guys.